Most of us grew up being told the same thing: work hard, save money, and let the professionals help you with the investments. We were taught that experts cost money, and that's just part of the process. No one questioned it because it sounds reasonable and responsible. Now imagine you're sitting in an office building, you have two financial advisors in front of you. One charges 1% of your portfolio every year, promises you that he's going to beat the market, and has a team of analysts working around the clock. The other just follows the market, no promises, no fancy strategy, no team, just tracks an index. Which one are you going with? Which one is going to make you more money over 30 years? If you said the first one, you're not alone, and that's exactly who this presentation is for. The data tells a different story, and Wall Street doesn't want you to know about it. My name is Boston Starr, and even though this is not financial advice, today I'm going to talk about and explain what these terms are, give you the performance data, talk about the fees involved, give examples to prove that for the average investor, index funds are almost always the best option. But first, let's make sure we're on the same page. An index fund is a type of investment designed to replicate the performance of the market index. The best example is something like an S&P 500, which tracks the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States. When you buy into an S&P index, you essentially own a tiny piece of all 500 of those companies. There's no fund manager making decisions, no one picking stocks, no one trying to be clever. The fund just mirrors the index. When the market goes up, you go up. When the market goes down, you go down. An actively managed fund is just the opposite. You pay a professional manager, sometimes an entire team, to research, analyze, and hand-pick investments they believe will outperform the market. The pitch sounds great: expertise, strategy, outperformance. The problem is that reality doesn't match the pitch. SPIVA stands for S&P Indices versus Active. They publish an annual report tracking how actively managed funds perform against their benchmark index. The 2023 report found that over a 20-year period, roughly 95% of large cap funds failed to beat the S&P 500. 95%. That's almost complete failure. Now you might be thinking, okay, but what about the 5%? Can I just pick one of those and be a winner? Here's the problem. The funds that outperform in one decade rarely repeat that performance in the next decade. Picking a winning active fund before it happens is essentially guessing. The research consistently says that past outperformance does not predict future success. Now, I want to tell a story that I think demonstrates all of this really well. You may have heard his name before: Warren Buffett. In 2008, he made a public $1 million bet. His challenge was simple. He believed that a plain, boring S&P 500 index fund would outperform any actively managed hedge fund portfolio over the next 10 years. A money manager named Ted Seeds took him up on it, selecting 5 hand-picked hedge funds managed by some of the brightest minds on Wall Street. These weren't random funds. These were elite. These were exclusive. Funds that wealthy investors paid premium fees to access. The kind of funds that sound impressive at dinner parties. By 2017, the bet concluded. Buffett's index funds had returned to about 125%. As for the 5 hedge funds, they averaged about 36. It wasn't even close. And Buffett donated his winnings to charity. His takeaways were simple, and he said it publicly multiple times. For most investors, a low-cost index fund is going to deliver much better results than hiring expensive professionals. If the hedge funds couldn't beat him, what makes anyone think that a standard retail mutual fund will? Now let's talk about fees, because this is where the math really takes place. The average actively managed mutual fund charges somewhere between 0.5 and 1% per year. That's what's called an expense ratio. Some charge a little bit more, some charge a little bit less. The typical S&P 500 index fund like Vanguard or Fidelity charges around 0.03%. That difference sounds tiny. It is not tiny. Let me walk you through it because I really want this to make sense. Let's say you're 20 years old, roughly our age, and you invest $50,000. You don't touch it for 4 years. Both funds earn about 8% annually, same market, same conditions. The only difference is the fees. The index fund at 0.03%, you're going to retire with roughly $1,050,000. For the active fund, you're going to retire with roughly 726,000. That's over $300,000 gone. Not lost in a bad trade, not lost in a crash or an accident, just drained from your bank account. You don't even see it. You're not paying attention to it. And really, the brutal part is that you pay the fees whether the manager beats the market or not. Good, bad, it doesn't matter. The fee comes out the same regardless. That extra $300,000 could paid off a house. It could bring your kids to college. It could save you 5 extra years of not working, getting to retire 5 years early. But it just disappears because of what fund you picked. Index funds flip that equation entirely. Low fees mean more money that stays invested and keeps compounding and keeps your money growing. Now, I want to be fair. There are other people with other opinions, and that's great. They say, what about bear markets? What if I have an active manager who can protect me when things go bad? And those are all valid points, but the data still doesn't support it. Most active managed funds still underperform their benchmarks during downturns, especially when you factor in fees and the cost of moving in and out of positions. Some might say, I just want to have someone else managing the funds for me, and that's fair too. But honestly, a financial advisor can absolutely help you build a portfolio of low-cost index funds, and probably makes their job a bit easier too. Advice and active management are not the same thing. You can get professional guidance without paying for stocks that statistically do not work. So here's my call to action. If you have money in an actively managed fund right now, go look up the expense ratio. Google the fund name and the word expense ratio and look up the comparable Vanguard or Fidelity index fund. Do that math over 30 to 40 years. And if you're just starting to invest, like lots of my college classmates probably are and should be, because the earlier you start, the better, start with a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. You don't need to be sophisticated. You don't need a stock picker. You need time, consistency, and low fees. Wall Street profits when you believe that complexity equals returns, but the data still says otherwise. The simplest investment strategy available to you is also statistically one of the best. Stop paying to lose, start investing in index funds. Thank you.